In the previous video, we looked at the installation configuration and some troubleshooting for the vSphere data protection appliance. In this video, we will take this further and actually look at the user interface for the vSphere data protection appliance using our lab that we have in place. So in this video, we will look at the vSphere data protection appliance user interface and do an extensive lab tour. We are now going to install and configure a new data protection appliance. And the reason for this is, so far we only have one VDP available. In order to show the replication of backups to another VDP, we need to install a second VDP. So we can kill two birds with one stone. I can show you how to install and configure a new VDP, and then we can use this new VDP as the destination for replicated backups. So we are now at our branch site. This is the vCenter server running in linked mode, but it is at the branch site. Related objects, virtual machines, you can see it's running the replication appliance servers and stuff as we've seen before, and a few practice virtual machines, but it is not running the vSphere data protection appliance. And what we have to do is to install a new appliance by deploying a new template. So we browse the local file. Looks like I have an OVF available here. This is the vSphere data protection OVF 612, perfect. And I use that. Next, very good. It's published by EMC. It's based on the EMC Avamar product. I accept, click next, and I'm going to install it at the branch site 2. And I'm going to install it on the host that's running at the branch site 2, because I want to replicate my backups to this branch site. There's a data store, seems to have quite a bit of storage free. I'm hoping it'll be sufficient. We have to go back first. I have to thin provision it to be sure that it is sufficient. Okay, now static manual, isolated manner, no configuration needed to the IP protocol, v4, and so on. Okay, that's good. I click next, and now we are going to need some settings. So the default gateway for this is 192.168.0.1. The domain name servers are 192.168.0.1. They are comma separated, 192.168.0.222, comma 8.8.8.8. Let's see if it ever uses the third domain name server, but it doesn't matter. Now, what's the IP address for this data protection appliance? It is 192.168.0.61. The existing VDP is .60, so this second VDP is going to be 61, 24-bit netmask. So I will actually key it in this mode, although it does say netmask or prefix, but it might be safer this way. Let's verify everything. OVF is good. It's a data protection 612. That's a download size on disk is 11 gig. DataSphere protection, pack publishing site 2. So it's going to be installed at our branch site, thin provisioned. And we can access it at 192.168.0.1. And I am going to click on power on after deployment. I'm going to finish. And this is going to take some time, so I will pause the recording after this. We will first look at monitor for this vCenter and the tasks, because this is where we'll see that installation progressing. I will wait just a bit to see that it's actually there. Yeah. So here we are. New instance UUID, a new BIOS UUID, a new MAC address for the VNIC, and off we go. It is being created on the right host. This host is on our branch site 2. So the OVF install completed and took about half an hour or so. And now it is in the process of booting up for the first time. It is still starting up, and here we see the IP address has been plugged in, 192.168.0.61, and we keep waiting. So the data protection appliance is now booted up. There's a quick start guide right up here. Open a browser to https 192.168.0.61 at port 8543 VDP configure, and that is what we are going to do. And we're now at the login screen for the data protection configuration utility. As you can see, it is not quite the virtual appliance management interface. It's a hybrid. Now again, interestingly enough, since it didn't ask for a password earlier, we are going to key in the password of change me, which is the first password. And that should log us into our welcome screen. And so here we are at the vSphere data protection configuration wizard, and it enables us to configure the VDP appliance. So let's now click on next, and static IP address is correct, IP gateway is correct. I'm going to key in my primary DNS 192.168.0.1. My secondary would be let's say 192.168.0.222. The host name here would be, let's call it VDP on server, or VDP site 2, and a domain will be site.local. Next. IP and DNS could not be resolved. Check the IP DNS values forward and reverse. So I'm going to have to go back and change that. And actually I will just call it VDP2. So I created the forward records and the backward PTR records in the domain name server, so the name is being resolved. It's VDP2. When I click next, it allowed me to go forward. So I'm going to fix my time zones here. I click next. I need to enter a password, strong password. So the initial password is change me, all in lowercase. Okay, so the vCenter username for the vCenter registration. So we are going to have this with the vCenter, which is administrator at site.local. The password is, and we are going to associate it with the vCenter, which would be 192.168.0.221. Let me just double check that. This is the vCenter running at site 2. Yep, that is correct. Use vCenter for SSO authentication. We test the connection. Excellent. Connection tests completed successfully. And we go to next. This is the big one where we need to create the storage. Alright, so we need to create new storage or attach new storage to existing VDP storage. So we are just going to create a new storage. Let's look at the options that we have. All the way up to 8. Yep, that is normal. We are not going to attach existing VDP storage. This is basically if you lost your VDP and you go back in there, install a new VDP, and then want to attach existing VDP storage. Then of course VDP migration. We're not going to do this from a previous VDP release to latest release. We are already on the latest release. So we are going to create a new storage, and this is the minimum amount that's allowed. I click next. Okay, so we need to allocate basically 3 disks, so I need 2 thin disks. Here we go. Our data stores are going to be here. I only have 1 data store available at my branch, so we'll thin provision it and we'll give it all 3 disks right there. I hit next. We don't really need 4 virtual CPUs. This is a really small installation, but it's not going to let me change that. So we'll just leave it as it is. It's virtual CPUs. I believe my branch servers have 2 physical cores, so it matches reasonably well to 4 virtual CPUs. Click next. And I click next again. Now, in the past, I have run a performance analysis of storage configuration. It takes a very long time, especially if your storage is not enterprise class, then it takes an even longer time. So we are going to actually pass on this for our purposes. And we are going to simply click next, and this will start the storage configuration, which cannot be undone, and I wish to continue, and we are going to let this run until the screen gives me an update. Here we go. It's starting the install storage service. It's adding the virtual disks. I believe it'll have about 3 virtual disks. So it's configuring the 3 data disks that will be used for data protection. Of course, it's all in one data store on one physical disk in my branch site implementation. However, even in real life, we should have multiple disks, multiple physical disks, if at all possible, or at least some sort of a RAID configuration underneath. Although the data protection appliance also tries to do data redundancy and so on in the way that it works, but still. So the appliance will now boot automatically. And so the device is rebooting, and we will let this run. I know it takes quite some time to do. So as an example, it might take around 40 to 45 minutes for this to reboot. It's pretty normal, and just to be sure that something is happening, it's always good to look at the console. And although the console moves very, very slowly, this first boot after configuration takes quite a long time. Like I said, 45 minutes to 1 hour. So after the system came up and the data protection appliance ran after we configured it, I logged back into the IP address of the VDP :8543. That's the port number, and then VDP-configure, and then use the new root password that I had entered during the initial configuration. So the screen obviously has changed quite a bit from then when we last saw it. So let's look at what we have in place. The host name is vdp2.site.local. I had to define the forward and reverse DNS name resolution before I was able to configure it, but you saw that earlier on. The vCenter is 221 and its SSO is 221. Okay, I'm going to have to check that. vSphere data protection host name is 210 is correct. It's running file level restores, backup recovery, it's running. So all the services seem to be up and running. Let's review storage. The total available storage is 536 gig. Everything is available. We haven't done any backups yet. It created 3 VMDKs on the same data store, which obviously in production is not good practice. We have not run a performance analysis. In my experience, this takes a long time, at least on my hardware. Now, the vSphere data protection system provides a mechanism to roll back after the backup repository and the appliance to a known and valid state. So basically, this system takes checkpoints. So after the initial startup, which has just completed, it has taken a checkpoint, and it is always possible to roll back. Now, of course, we have to unlock it and so on. There's a small, simple process actually to do that. But the beauty of it is that you can actually then perform the VDP rollback to a selected checkpoint. So if it is corrupt at any point in time, then you can always go back to a known checkpoint to make sure that is. It's a very important feature. We click on upgrade. It uses basically ISO images in this case. The emergency restore is very important, because if the vCenter is not available, you have to be able to use the data protection appliance to actually restore data. So the emergency restore allows us to do that. So if the vCenter is down, then you have to go in directly into emergency restore and actually restore from there. If we have time available for this video, we are going to try to do that. The log collector basically is about the logs. These are MS App related. Those are the client logs, and you can download those. And you can download the config file information from the proxies and everything else like that. And these are logs that are being created. So it's always a good thing. And if you want to migrate backup and backup verification jobs from this VDP to EMC, we can click migrate, and it'll migrate to the EMC Avamar. Let's look at the VDP appliance. I want to make sure that this is correct. So in reviewing this, it just looked incorrect to me. Remember, we have installed this at branch 2. While branch 2 is running vCenter 221, it is running in the domain site.local. The platform services controller for that is actually running at 220. So I need to make that change. So I click that. vCenter registration. I have reviewed the information. I want to reconfigure vCenter. Next. That's my username for SSO. That is correct. My vCenter is 221 and I need to, this is the part that I missed before. I have checked this box that says use vCenter for SSO authentication, which means that the platform services controller and the SSO services are basically running in that vCenter, but they are not. They're running in a different location, which is 220. So 192.168.0.220. Okay, I click next and then I finish. And it is going through that process. So it was able to stop the management service and is now starting up the management services again. And it has apparently changed its connectivity to the vCenter and the SSO, which in our case were different. The vCenter was 221, but it was running off the SSO or the platform services controller at address 220. So as you can see here, it's restarting the services, and importantly, it's updated the registered vCenter configuration and starting up all the other services as we speak. And it is telling me that the vCenter reconfiguration service has completed. So I close that, and it is interesting, it is still showing me the SSO. It's going to connect to the web server. That's good. So the web services have restarted, and you can see the change we made. So the vCenter is 221, but the platform services controller is running in the vCenter, embedded in the vCenter at 220, which is our headquarters site. The other change I made was to put the time zone as UTC, because I want to make sure that the time zones are consistent across all our servers, and I have a feeling that all the others are UTC, and that the New York East Coast time zone was not correct. So having done this, let's just look one more at our site. This looks good. It probably has that checkpoint, no upgrades, no log collectors on migration. Okay, so go back to configuration, and interesting user interface. The logout is on the bottom left hand side, so we log out of that. So now we have two instances of vSphere data protection running. One is running on our host system, which is the headquarters system, and then there is a second system that we just installed that's running out at the branch. And when I click on this, you can see the drop down now has two different VDPs. Unfortunately, I didn't change the name, so they have the same name. But this one does not have any backups defined, as you can see here. And when I go to the other one and I click that and I look at backup, the other VDP should show me the Windows Server 2016 backup job, as is here that I created. So we have two of these services running. Now, in order to get that second service running, there were a couple of things that needed to get done. The time synchronization was extremely important, the NTP server. And while I had set the time zone to UTC on the VDP appliance, on the SSO, and the vCenter server at the branch, and I had NTP running as well on all three of them, all synchronizing to the same pool servers, the NTP pool servers that are available in the US. Even in spite of that, I was unable to actually get the second VDP running at the branch to actually show up here. And the reason was that there was a time synchronization problem. Even though the NTP servers were correct, the hosts were running NTP. So what I had to go in and do was to restart VMware tools. So I had to go in and restart the VMware tools on the vCenter servers, like here. So I secured shell into the 220 vCenter server, and I entered VMware tool services restart. And I also went into the 221 vCenter server, and I did the same thing, service VMware tools restart, as well as I went into the VDP appliance here and I did a service VMware tools restart that you see as the command, the fifth or sixth line from the top. And it's only when I restarted VMware tools on all three systems did that second VDP actually show up as an option, and the error I was getting disappeared. So please just be very careful about that. The time zone is UTC, and it should be the same on your hosts, the platform services controller, your vCenter server, as well as the VDP appliances. So it's all good now. We are in good shape here because we've just looked at how to install and configure VDP. Even encountered some interesting problems that were easily solved, but took some time to figure out why that was happening. So sometimes just restarting these tools is the best thing, or maybe just rebooting the system. Would have done it too, but didn't want to do that. VMware tools restart worked both, and you have to do it again on the platform services controller, vCenter, on the vCenter in the branch, as well as on the VDP appliance that's running at the branch. Now this puts us in good shape to configure replicated backups, which is one of the videos that we should be able to do now. So I will have in a couple of videos time some interesting information how once the backups are done by the VDP, by the main VDP running at headquarters, we can then replicate those backups to this secondary VDP or the second VDP that's running out at the branch. In the next video, we will look at managing backup jobs for the vSphere data protection appliance. I look forward to seeing you there.